took a while for that bar to to get to the end. I'm sorry. We actually are officially live on YouTube now. We're go for lunch.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. I would like to call the September 8th, 2021 Henrietta Town Board meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley.
Here.
Councilmember Stafford.
Here.
Councilmember Safranek.
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here. We always begin with a silent prayer followed by the pledge. Tonight, I'd like to essentially dedicate the prayer to two groups of people. The first are all the victims of the terror attack on the World Trade Centers and the Pentagon in 9/11, as well as all of the first responders who have since died from the conditions suffered during the recovery efforts. And the second group are all the soldiers lost during the Afghanistan war, including the most recent 12 due to a terrorist attack. So we'll take a moment of silence for those individuals. Thank you. We'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the August 11th, 2021 town board meeting. Seconded.
Any discussions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley.
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the August 25th, 2021 special town board meeting.
I wasn't there at the August 25th.
I will
one.
Second.
Oh, Rob got it. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley.
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Abstain.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. I will note that Millie was present as an observer. If Governor Hochul had passed her law a little bit sooner, she could have been a participant. That if you haven't heard, they've put back the law that allows for remote participation by board members in public meetings,
Oh, good.
which I actually think should be permanent. I think the quorum should have to be in the public area, but everybody else should be able to join in, but that's just me. We have two public hearings tonight. As I said, I think I'm going to do these in reverse order just because of the expected length of discussions. So first up, I'm going to call for the public hearing for the proposed local law to revise the Town of Henrietta zoning code to address solar energy systems. So just a little background. In 2018, we were in the middle of a comprehensive land use plan update. At the time, we had a moratorium in place on multifamily housing because we were having problems with apartments appearing in industrial zones. And so we updated the comprehensive land use plan update. During that time, in the GEIS that was associated with it, we talked about a number of things, including incentive zoning and updating our solar codes. As we started to get near the end, we still had some work to do. And so we decided to put the incentive zoning and the solar codes off because I did not want to extend the moratorium any further. We needed to get the new zoning up in place so as to not create a burden for property owners. And so now we're fixing that up. We were supposed to do this last year, but COVID kind of changed our schedule. Someone had asked via email, what is the purpose of these designs? One is to essentially bring them up to date with newer technologies. Another was to add, there was no large scale solar allowed in Henrietta. And that's kind of ambiguous because if a New York State, forgot what that section of law is called, but that the large projects, 25 megawatts or something, a particular size, we couldn't stop them anyways, but yeah, but the point was our old large scale solar was, I think, 10,000 square feet, which anyone who knows solar projects, that's nothing. So we added solar, large scale solar for, we did it specifically as part of our farmland protection plan. And I know that sounds funny, you're putting solar arrays on farmland, but the idea was small farms, which is all we have in Henrietta, struggle to get by financially. And so if we could find additional income for farmers, it could help those small farms survive. And so one of the ideas was an active farm. So they had to be essentially getting the agricultural exemption because they're producing farm. It's handled by the ag and market law. We decided that they could take up to 25% of their acreage and put solar arrays on it to essentially produce additional income to support the farm operations on the rest of the land. So we did a pilot project. Interestingly enough, it was with a member of the Henrietta Fire District. And so we kind of did that all through stipulations on his special use permit to test it out. We refined some of the rules and now we're putting those in place. In addition, we're also putting in place what's called a unified solar permit, which is basically an expedited means for homeowners to put in residential solar. It can only be a certain size, but it's a way to help encourage the growth of solar, use of solar for those who are interested in it, but to also put it in the code so that it's not, for lack of a better way to put it, a blight on their neighbors. And so that's what the purpose of these codes are. And I'll begin by asking, is there anybody who wishes to offer comment on the proposed solar law or solar in general? Anybody online? Oh, come on in. You're just in time. Oh, okay. Come up and introduce yourself and give us your feedback.
Hi.
Could you pull the mic down towards you? There we go. Thank you.
Naomi Plus, and
Jesse Burdick plus.
we are both from 83 Cattaraugus Drive, Rochester, 14623, in the great town of Henrietta. So we had some questions about the code revision, in particular, some of the wording. One says, energy produced by a rooftop solar energy system shall be consumed on site. And it seems to prohibit sending excess energy to the grid, which is the sort of standard thing right now.
The current.
So we're going to word it. We were having a discussion with that based off of your email. The purpose of that was to prevent, we don't want to see what I'll call commercial solar arrays in residential properties. So we're going to word it offsetting your electrical use, which is essentially what you're doing when you're sending back to the grid. They
Sure.
knock down your bill, correct?
Right, yeah.
So
I
we're
mean,
going to
that's
say
the-
that's allowed, but you're not allowed to essentially wholesale sell electricity back to In other words, it's not a commercial enterprise. It's for your property and offset your bill.
Okay, so then you're planning to revise the wording. on
Don,
that.
do you have the revised wording? Is your mic on if you're answering?
I'm actually finishing it right now.
Okay, we'll come
I
back.
got it.
Oh, go ahead if you're ready.
Okay. So I'm going to scroll down to it. I was changing it in two places. Let me scroll up just 10 seconds. Okay, so, okay. I made a few changes in response to Naomi's comments, so I'm stopping on the ones. One of them was qualified solar installer. So my proposition to resolve the
Well, before
comment.
you read that one, we ought to have her actually, so the
Okay,
people in the thing know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
so-
so we were talking about the issue of being able to
Right.
give power back to the
Right.
grid as sort of. a
yep, I was
credit.
just gonna go in order, but I'll jump around. So to resolve that issue, energy produced by a rooftop solar energy system shall be consumed on site and or may be transferred off-site to a utility, but only in order to and in an amount no greater than required to offset on-site energy usage.
So is that what the current, I mean, don't know what the current situation is with the utility. If people produce somewhat more than they use, they're, I guess you're saying the utility can't pay them for that. I don't know that they are now, but I don't know if you really want to prohibit that going forward. That's a different kind of concept than,
Again, this is for, so it would be like R115. If you were out on farm portions, you could go bigger. This is,
Yeah.
this is just to be clear, there's others types that you can get with a special use permit
Mhm.
that would allow you to do that. This is specifically for the residential rooftop and small scale ground installations.
Right, and I got that, and I think that makes sense. I just think that if we're thinking sustainably into the future, it would be not a bad thing if rooftop solar, if individual houses sometimes made more than they needed for their site and, paid that into the utility, and thereby, maybe we need fewer.
We're able to increase the percentage of the grid power being powered by renewable energy instead of fossil fuels.
I get all that.
And
But
I mean-
again, this doesn't prohibit you from doing that. You just that's the one you have to do that's considered the medium scale, and you have to have a special use permit for it.
But
Because
why do you?
why?
yeah.
Because you don't want in a residential neighborhood, I guarantee you will have issues if someone's entire yard is taken over
No,
every inch of rooftop
right, but
and square
let's-
panels.
But the very first section only talks about residential rooftop, doesn't it? Let me see, I'll pull it out and look. I mean, I hear you. I don't really think that you want everybody to have solar all through their backyard and they have their neighbor kids like crawling around through it. And I think there's all kinds of just plain safety issues there. But if you have rooftop solar, I don't honestly see an issue with rooftop solar situations making a little more than the household.
Yeah, and
So
in-
again,
I
it
don't
depends.
think currently that RG&E will pay you for that. I'm just saying, just to be really clear about it. I think right now, if you make extra and you send it into RG&E, they'll say, hey, that was great. Thanks so much.
No, to my knowledge, they give you a credit on your fuel bill, but they won't actually pay you cash.
Right, and they won't, which means that they will not go over what your household is using.
Correct.
On the other hand, if we want to look into the future, at some point, it would be better, ideally, if places like rooftops made a little more than they needed to offset energy used by, people who are in places where they didn't have that option. And I'm not sure that we should prohibit it. I certainly completely agree with the idea of putting very strict rules on having backyard solar arrays on the ground where there are a safety issue, but I don't understand the restriction on roofs. And as I say, right now it's a moot point because it doesn't matter because RG&E isn't going to pay you for it.
Well,
But
and
I
I
don't think
also
we-
question whether you can get enough
Whether you could even
to
generate. enough.
generate enough.
At this point, I don't think that solar panels have developed.
You could, if you're running in a house where you're doing not too much access consumption
Okay.
and a reasonable size grid,
Okay.
you could reasonably go
Okay,
over.
Yeah.
your point is made.
And not only that, but you
I
could.
don't know that we're gonna change it. I'm just saying I understand your
Right,
point.
and not only might you be able to now, but going forward as solar panels improve, which we certainly expect them
Right.
to. I think it's even more likely that in the future, I mean, as I say, right now it's completely moot, but I don't think that's a good
So
reason
at
to
that
code
point,
avoid it.
I will also note that just as we're updating it now from previous, if the stuff changes and we can get to that point and we can get our genie to pay back, we can change it. Again, what we're trying to do is
That's true.
prevent commercial
Right, and we're completely.
installations
Yeah,
in residential neighborhoods.
and we're completely on the same page
Sure.
about that. We don't, nobody,
Yep.
I don't want that level of risk in residential neighborhoods. Okay, next one. Roof-mounted solar energy systems shall be designed and installed to avoid the shedding of ice or snow from the roof onto any pedestrian or vehicular travel area, sidewalk, stairwell, driveway, parking area, or porch. I mean, I'm just thinking of my neighbor down the street. His solar array is on the south side of the house, which happens to be right over his driveway. Just got put in a couple of years ago. So that would, it sounds to me like that would be prohibited now. isn't
No,
it?
it wouldn't be prohibited, but if you've seen anyone, like, I'm a person with a metal roof. When you either, hopefully have dormers like we have over our stairwells, so to protect that. But if you don't, for other areas, they put in bars to prevent the ice from sheeting down and essentially killing someone. So there are ways to prevent it, even if the solar array is there.
So what you're saying is that if you're going to be over something like that, then you would need snow guards.
Right, the guards that protect either the snow, again, the snow isn't as dangerous as the ice.
Right.
And those are often installed along with panels.
Right.
Um,
So again, it has to be, correct me if I'm wrong, it said it has to be installed in such a way as to prevent,
Designed and installed to avoid the shedding.
right,
Okay.
Yeah, as long as that includes allowing solar panels, just with the caveat that you need some sort of safety, I think that is reasonable.
Yeah, it's reasonable as long as, it's just the idea that you couldn't put it over any of those things really
Don, I
rules
don't
it
know,
out for
do we
small
need any
homes.
clarification in that, or would instructions to our building department be enough for that?
I can maybe wordsmith a little bit.
Okay,
Okay.
so again, the point of that is, if it's gonna be over something like that, you need to design it so that it doesn't send a sheet of ice to,
Yeah, no, I think.
Clobber
it's-
somebody.
Yeah, safety is a good idea.
Yep. Yeah, we're not saying you can't put them there, you just have to put them there in a design that is safe.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, how about, so roof-mounted solar energy systems shall be designed and installed so as to protect against injury from the shedding of ice or snow
Perfect,
from the roof onto blah, 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 blah.
Works
I
for
think
me.
that's perfect.
yeah, that sounds really good, because, yeah, that's great. All solar energy systems shall be designed, erected, and installed by a qualified solar installer. This seems to prohibit homeowners from installing their own solar systems.
so, now obviously there was some mention in your email about like the little, I'll call them self-contained solar lights. Those, Don actually had the language to make sure it's clear those are exempted, so, like the solar powered path lights, we're not talking about those. The challenge you have with this solar array is that when you're hooking in, an inverter and a transfer switch and that type of stuff, there are some serious chance of electrocution and or essentially blowing up your house. In fact, I think the fire district just responded to one where somebody had hooked a generator up to a house during a power outage without a transfer switch. When the power came back on, the transformer or the generator, blew up. So we've talked about, and again, I think Don has that language,
Yeah, it's-
that we would basically, it would either be a certified qualified solar installer or that the electrical hookup would have to be done by a licensed electrician.
yeah, I have So for the first one, smaller self solar powered devices directly attached to a building, such as solar powered porch lighting, are not solar energy systems and are exempt from these regulations. That's one. And then the other one was qualified installer. Let me just scroll up. All solar energy systems shall be designed, erected, installed by a qualified solar installer, except that rooftop solar energy systems installed on single-family homes may be installed by the homeowner so long as the installation is inspected by a duly qualified third-party electrical inspector.
I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah,
That seems really reasonable to me.
And the only thing I will add to that is, Kevin Wilson, are you on?
Yeah, yes, I'm here, Steve.
Are homeowners technically allowed to connect into the box, or is supposed to be for that connection? So for something like a transfer switch, is that allowed to be a do-it-yourself project, or should the connection into the grid and or main box be done by a certified electrician?
I would highly recommend that it's done by a certified electrician. However, every other electrical installation that's done by a homeowner, provided that they have a third-party electrical inspection, we accept that.
Okay,
So
that's the language we have now. I think maybe, I think we just, when people come in, say, you got to really know what you're doing. Otherwise, we recommend the hookup be done. So like you can wire all the panels, you can bring all the stuff back to the box.
Mhm.
But again, the connections to the grid are non-trivial.
Yeah,
and
a
I
lot of
think it's
homeowners,
common
yeah.
for even solar companies to get a
Right.
separate electrician to do that just because of the
Right.
danger.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems really reasonable
Okay.
to me too.
Anything else?
No, I think that
No, I think that
addresses
addresses it.
Well, I
We
guess I have a procedural question. So will this then be rewritten and come up for review again? Or are you guys gonna do something based on what happened today?
So basically, we have to make a determination if we consider that these changes are significant,
Mhm.
then it has to go to another public hearing. If they are not significant, we can actually enact it today, in which case it would then get sent in as part of the general law and the code would update.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just curious.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
For your
Yeah,
time and
nice seeing you
attention.
again.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody online who wishes to talk? Is there anyone else in person? Anyone from the board? Hearing no further comment on solar, I'm going to call the public hearing for the proposed local law to revise the town of Henrietta zoning code to address solar energy systems closed. Next up, we have a public hearing for the proposed Henrietta Fire District extension into West Brighton Fire Protection District. So again, to set the stage, many years ago, couldn't tell you exactly when, the town of Brighton, so let me take a step back. West Brighton is defined as the portion that is south and west of the canal and east of the river. It's a portion of Brighton that is really separated from the rest of town. In fact, I don't think there are any east-west roads other than 390 that cross there, other than at the borders. So Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road crosses, and I think at is it Westfall, it's the border with the city. And so it's kind of isolated. And so years ago, they created a fire protection district and they contracted out the fire protection for, I think it's roughly a decade. The city has been providing that service, and the town of Brighton just put out an RFP for someone to take over the West Brighton Fire Protection District. One of the respondents, in fact, the respondent that the town of Brighton chose is the Henrietta Fire District, which currently services the town of Henrietta. The proposal essentially is that the Henrietta Fire District would extend its boundaries to encompass West Brighton Fire Protection District. So if you look up on the screen, you'll see the map. The slightly darker blue portion above Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, that's West Brighton. And so that would be incorporated into the Henrietta Fire District. And so there, for those who don't know how taxes are levied, they basically add up all the parcels within that district. And they, more specifically, they add up the taxable portion of those parcels, because some parcels are fully exempt, some are partially exempt, some have no exemptions. That produces the total assessed value of all the parcels. And so when the fire district then creates its budget and they put forth a tax levy, you divide that tax levy by the total assessed value, and that gives you the rate. Typically, well, right now, I think it's about $3.19 per $1,000 of assessed value. So that is what would happen basically today. The Henrietta Fire District's levy is only over the properties in Henrietta. In the future, if this goes through, it would be the properties that are in Henrietta plus the properties that are in West Brighton. My recollection of the numbers, and we'll have some folks come up to give more details in a moment, it's about 82% of the properties would be in Henrietta and about 18% would be in West Brighton, if I remember the numbers. But in addition to that, in the deal, that the town of Brighton would be providing the fire station that is located on West Henrietta Road, as well as up to $500,000 to purchase a new truck for that station. And then basically the fire district would also essentially then, again, they'd be receiving the taxes from the West Brighton, as well as hopefully any, I haven't heard the update as to whether it's been fully confirmed, but hopefully any pilot revenues from within that area. So some places set up a pilot and or a donation for some of the tax exempt entities will sometimes do that. And the last thing I will note is that in response to a request, I don't remember if it was from Mike or Rob, but we reached out to the town of Brighton that because this is really to serve the town of Brighton, that if there are any legal challenges to this move, that the town of Brighton would bear all the legal costs, not the town of Henrietta. I don't know whether there's going to be any legal challenges, but again, it makes sense to protect ourselves. So I just checked again with Supervisor Melee today, and he did it. He again confirmed that. So I would like to ask a representative from the Henrietta Fire District to come up and explain the proposal in a little bit more detail, and then I would like to open it up to any residents or other individuals who would wish to provide comment. So.
Supervisor, council members. My name is Bill Heist. I'm the chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners for the Henrietta Fire District. As was presented to the board, we have presented some preliminary numbers, what we feel that the consolidation with West Brighton would, how the impact would go for both the taxpayers in that West Brighton fire protection area, as well as within Henrietta. Again, we're early in the budget process for our typical budget season. But we tried to get some numbers together that we felt fairly confident on. Some are likely on the high end because there's a lot of unknowns still. Some are, as we look through the numbers, some we've just kind of left the same because they're going to be, I'll say, in the dirt of any change that would occur. For instance, insurance on the additional building. From a standpoint of the overall budget, it doesn't really turn the wheel very much. So obviously the main impact to the proposal would be personnel expenses. And the chief will go through the operational aspects of what we're planning to do. but it essentially involves hiring firefighters and promoting internally to provide supervision for those firefighters and then essentially backfilling. So in all, it's a hiring process of 12 firefighters. That puts a crew at that firehouse 24/7, 365 of 2 firefighters and an officer. And that is at this point our typical response model throughout the town of Henrietta. Every staffed apparatus is running with that model with an occasional overage. And I'll let the chief go into the implications of that staffing model and what it means to the overall combined district. What we feel the implications are from an overall financial standpoint would likely increase the expenditures for a combined district by about 1.5 million, 1.5 and change. And that we've looked through all our numbers, looked at what we can do with our standing budget, what the expenses for that consolidation piece would be in an attempt to keep the tax rate the same as it is this year. So that does involve, for instance, taking in our building maintenance line item, there's reserve funds, there are projects that we have slated for Station 4. We can scale those back in preference of having funds available for a Station 7, what we'll call it for now, available should we need to do something at that firehouse in the next year. The chief and his representatives have gone through that firehouse pretty extensively. I think his conclusion is it's move-in ready. There's obviously some little things that need to be done, but as you know, it's been staffed for the past 10 years with the City of Rochester firefighters. So there's not a lot that we need to do to make it OSHA compliant, ADA compliant for our firefighters. It also gives us a lot of extra room. As you know, we're a combined district. We're career staff and volunteers, and we've been looking at ways to expand our volunteer in-station staffing by use of duty crews. We already do that in a lot of our firehouses. However, not all of them are compliant that we can have crews there 24 hours. So if we have interested volunteers that want to, go to their volunteer firehouse, many of them can't do that. They're not sprinklered, they're not ADA compliant, and therefore we run afoul of some things. This Station 7 would help accomplish that. So there's some expenses there, obviously. The biggest expense is the personnel expense, and that includes the salaries of newly hired firefighters, the promotional salaries, as well as the benefits that go with that, and the stuff that comes along with everything. Social Security, fire and police retirement program, physicals, wellness programs, health insurance, all that. But again, as boiling it down, as you've been presented, we believe that based on those preliminary numbers that we're actually in the process of validating right now, our expenses would go from about estimated 15 million, 1505 in 2022. That's what our budget looks like today. If we add the West Brighton consolidation, we'd probably be in the 16.6 range. There is obviously revenue that we get, non-tax revenue. There's donations that we receive. As you also know, we receive no pilot revenue in the town of Henrietta for some of the tax exempt property. Some of that pilot things that the Brighton Fire District or the Brighton Town of Brighton has in place for the West Brighton Fire Protection District, some of that would come into Henrietta. Some of it was not very well defined at the time. Some of it has to be renegotiated. And therefore, those numbers aren't even in this. So if anything, our numbers are probably low on the revenue side. We do have unappropriated funds, and it's labeled incorrectly, but we do have funds that we see that we're not going to expend in the 2021 year. We had certain projects. Obviously, the Station 6 project got delayed with COVID. So we had funds that we had planned to expend in 2021 that we're going to be able to push into 2022, which will help reduce the tax levy. And then obviously the expanded tax base of West Brighton as well, of the West Brighton Fire Protection District. We're waiting for some final numbers from the comptroller's office, but based on our conversations with them, we looked at the 2022 TAV for Henrietta, and we used the 2021 TAV for the West Brighton Fire Protection District to get the combined number. There's a little bit of modifications that the comptroller office does to that, but they seem to be fairly minor. For instance, the $500,000 truck that Brighton is going to bond, that maybe come out of the, not necessarily the TAB, but it will come out of the 2% levy limit that will be presented with once all those numbers come to fruition. In the end of the day, Our intent is to keep the tax rate that we have today at 319 the same, whether we do the West Brighton project or not. Again, we have certain projects that we had planned for 2022. We'll put on hold, we'll delay, we'll scale back a little bit. They're important projects, but they may not be completely time sensitive that, we have to get them done in 2022. We can delay those a little bit and to enable us to do this at essentially a tax rate, and therefore a tax, assuming assessment doesn't go up, an actual tax number for residents to stay the same from 2021 to 2022. The question has arose, what happens if 2023, 4, 5, 6, and 7? Obviously, there are increases that are built into our budgets typically. And again, a lot of that is personnel expense by contract. Those are somewhat unknown. We obviously they're known for the next period. We are in a contract season coming up in 2022. And therefore, those could morph a little bit. I don't expect to see dramatic changes in the contract space. However, typically what we've seen between the personnel expenses, which is typically about a 1.5% increase right off the bat based on salary, benefits, insurance going up, the retirement programs, 1.5 there, and probably another 1.5 within all the other expenses that typically go up for us every year. And as you know, unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of other revenue sources to offset those every year. And that's why over the course of many years, you see the tax rate for the fire district go up. It has gone up, as you've noted, considerably in the past 5 years. But as you look out at the fire district and what we've done, there were several very ambitious projects that paid for. Painful, yes, but very ambitious projects that put better staffing, put the district and the townsfolk in better position for public safety. And therefore, we think they were definitely a value added. We see that kind of trickling down a little bit. Obviously, the staffing plan was one of those biggest projects that we undertook. And at the point we are today, especially if this program goes through, that brings us to some numbers that meet some NFPA standards that we've been eyeing as far as minimum staffing on scene within a certain amount of minutes. Our plan, if this were not to go through, our plan is to continue on that program over the course of the next several years. So we would do hiring over the course of the next several years to get to that number that we want to have. And that could, we could spread that out over several years. However, the expense is still going to be there. With this consolidation, that expense essentially gets paid for right off the bat without any impact to the Henrietta taxpayers. And they get the benefit of those 12 additional firefighters, an additional engine company running to emergencies. One thing that I've seen in a lot of social media, everybody wants to make this an us versus them situation. In the end of the day, it becomes the Henrietta Fire District. And therefore, emergencies in Henrietta get the benefit of 4 staffed companies that can respond immediately. An emergency West Brighton area gets the benefit of 4 staffed engines that can respond immediately. It's not if there's a fire at, let's go to example. Movies 10, a fire's at Movies 10. It doesn't mean that truck's going to be all alone and that's the only truck because they're the West Brighton truck. They're going to get the full response of the Henrietta Fire District, both career and volunteer, that's needed to mitigate that incident. Same way as if there's a fire at Town Hall, the truck from Station 7 is going to be coming to that fire to mitigate that situation. Now, obviously, operationally, we get there, we take care of the situation, and then we start to draw down the resources, get them back to their representative stations, so they're protecting those areas. However, we get everybody there quickly. We get the right number of people to do all the jobs that need to be done very quickly early on in the incident by going through this plan and getting the right staffing in place. Any questions? I'll turn it over to the chief. He can talk more of that operational aspect and why Henrietta felt this was the best path to take.
Sounds good.
Okay, chief.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Cholich, I'm the fire chief for the Henrietta Fire District. And I'm going to speak a little bit on the operational sense with this West Brighton consolidation. As we talked at the previous town workshop, from as Commissioner Heist explained, from a financial aspect, this makes sense. It's fiscally responsible. From an operational standpoint, it's the same thing. We currently share a border a very long border with the West Brighton fire protection area. We've historically responded into that area, and prior to the city of Rochester taking over, there were many cases where Henrietta units actually handled many of the emergencies in the West Brighton area by themselves. Looking at it logistically now, just to echo some of the things that Commissioner Heiss said, that'll give us that extra staffed company. I know there were some questions as to what is NFPA, what is NFPA 1710. So NFPA is the National Fire Protection Association, and their standard 1710 is what outlines how many firefighters you're supposed to have on scene within 8 minutes, 90+% of the time. We, even though we are a suburban area, we're actually considered urban when it comes to NFPA because our population density. With us having a population density of over 1,000 people per square mile, which is what we have on a good day, by the town's own numbers, pre-COVID, we're looking at a population of 250,000 within the town during the daytime hours. We are a very busy agency. We're going to be flirting with about 5,000 alarms this year. We have multiple incidents, simultaneous incidents on a regular basis. By adding this company out of West Brighton, it allows us to meet that 1710 standard. It'll allow us to have 16 people on duty at any one time. It's going to enhance the protection to the residents and the commercial area of Jefferson Road from 390 all the way to the river. Because we did a study, we looked at the mapping, and that West Brighton station on West Henrietta Road is actually closer to a number of areas of Henrietta, closer than any of our stations. Conversely, Station 5 on Pinnacle Road is closer to some parts of West Brighton. I don't profess to know how or when they created these fire district boundaries many years ago as however a farmer's field was and where the stone wall was, but that's the reality that we have to deal with now. So by consolidating these two areas, it's going to enhance the services for the Henrietta residents at little to no cost, with the West Brighton area bearing the majority of the financial burden for adding that additional company to protect the residents of Henrietta. And like Commissioner Heiss said, conversely, we'll be protecting as one part of the district, the West Brighton area. And again, like we spoke during the workshop, this is really just an extension of everything else that's been going on. The vast majority of West Brighton is currently within the Rush Henrietta School District. So, the kids all know firefighter Mike. They all see our firefighters already. It's just that natural extension into taking care of the residents. Can I answer any questions?
Yeah, I just have a couple. Some of these I know the answer. I just want to get the question out there and make sure it's clarification, so it's on the record. So
Absolutely.
if you just decided not to absorb the West Brighton Fire Protection District, you'd still be adding staff to get to the number of companies needed for 1170 or 1711.
1710? Yes,
1710.
correct.
I should just say NFPA, that I can remember. Would you then have had to add a garage bay for the other truck, or do you have, in other words, where would they have shared a truck, or would it just have been extra crew?
That would be a TBD. We could either add an extra company, or we would not overstaff, but fully staff the remainder of the apparatus. So instead of having 3 on a piece, we would have 4 on a piece.
Gotcha. But the point is, that cost would be fully borne by Henrietta taxpayers alone if there was no West Brighton Fire Protection.
Correct.
And then you kind of touched on it, both you and your chairman, the mutual aid. So for instance, I know one of the other respondents, or I'm pretty sure one of the other respondents was Gates, I believe.
Correct.
It's not like any of their other firehouses are anywhere near West Brighton or could get there in any amount of time. So if an incident happened through mutual aid requirements, we would be the responding agency.
Correct.
So we would have all the expense of protecting West Brighton without any of the tax revenue to offset the cost of doing such.
That is correct.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that, because like I said, a lot of people seem to miss that point. And the third one I'll point out, in the us, even in the us versus them, it doesn't make sense because someone keeps saying, well, any improvements we do to a fire station in Henrietta, or excuse me, in Brighton, if we do improvements to that fire station, Henrietta residents will be picking up 82% of the costs. I point out to them, if you turn it around the other way, any improvements we do to a Henrietta fire station, West Brighton residents will be picking up 18% of the costs. And since there are 6 stations in Henrietta and 1 station in Brighton, that means we have 85% of the stations. So we kind of make out a little bit. So even if you turn it into an us versus them, us wins. So again, I agree it should be thought of as the whole thing. You know, I certainly like to bust Supervisor Melee's chops now and then, but we absolutely work together. You know, again, the town lines are lines on paper and residents on both sides need adequate protection. So I think that's very important. Did other board members have questions before we open it to the public?
I just wanted to say, you know, with the NFP, you know, we're gonna be hiring these firefighters anyway, you know, either way. And this way it's shared by the West Brighton Fire District residents. And then also do mutual aid. You know, when we first heard about this and it was talked about, if Gates ends up with it, we'll be servicing them all the time anyways. So I think it's very important that we do get it.
Just out of curiosity, so MCC is located in that district?
Correct.
Do you know, are they a location where there's a lot of call out or anything along those lines?
So according to the numbers that the city of Rochester has been able to provide us to this point, I don't like using the COVID excuse, but it skewed the numbers. So if you look at the 2019 numbers versus the 2020 numbers. So Engine 8 currently runs out of the West Brighton Firehouse. In totality, they ran about 800 calls in 2019. That number dropped to about 650 in 2020, which was the COVID year. So if we're going to use it proportionally with how many times we go to RIT, I'm going to say they probably go to MCC 10 to 15% of the time, or 10 to 15% of their calls are at MCC, but we haven't been able to break down the numbers specifically by address from them at this point.
Thank you. What sort of partnership or anything has been established in the past with MCC? I know there's a partnership with RIT. I believe RIT pays in a certain benefit to the fire district.
So historically, RIT has graciously donated to us approximately $45,000 a year. And they did contribute a little bit extra when we purchased the ladder truck 2 years ago. I understand that there is a pilot agreement, not for MCC specifically. However, it is for the dorms that are on campus. I also understand that pilot that was worked out is subject to renegotiation anytime that there is a change in fire protection services. So that's one of the things that we have to explore to determine what that pilot donation or pilot payment is going to be. I don't know the legalities if MCC can make any type of a donation towards the fire district since it's a state entity.
Sure.
I can tell you that where my daughter goes to school, she goes to Penn State, and I know that Penn State University supports 10% of the operating budget of the volunteer fire department that services Penn State, which is quite a big chunk of money. But I also believe that the Pennsylvania laws are different than they are here in New York.
Thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, I have two. Public is asking a lot of questions and it's been on Facebook and everything else. We kind of alluded here a little bit to the controller's office coming in with a timeline of a report. Do we have a timeline on when that report might be in?
Which report are you referring to specifically, sir?
Oh, so one of the things, Rob, I think when Bill was talking about earlier is as part of the tax cap calculation, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. That all goes through the comptroller. In addition, when you merge two districts in terms of determining the full district boundaries, and I suspect that I just lost his name at the Monroe County Real Property. Tim Murphy.
Yes, Tim Murphy.
Will be playing a big part in that in terms of they don't know what the final, because it doesn't exist today, they can't calculate the total assessed value of the combined thing.
Well, one of the things that concerns a lot of homeowners and taxpayers is that the report that came out before on the controllers that you guys are aware of, they're saying that, you know, we didn't realistically look at the budget to save money for taxpayers. How can we, no one knows the future, but is there any contingency plans on cash on hand to kind of keep our budgets down in the future when taking over this West Brighton?
So let me just clarify the comptroller, state comptroller report stated essentially that they felt that there was some over taxation, that I think it was that you undervalued the amount.
Essentially overestimated expenses over the
right.
course of the last 4 years. So the comptroller's report essentially concludes that at the end of 2020, we essentially have $4 million on the positive side. What the comptroller's report doesn't fully go into and explain is that's on December 31st, 2020. We've already looked at that number and said, yeah, we're a little heavy here. So when you look at our 2021 budget, we already envisioned that we were going to be a little heavy, and our budget is due in September. So we already envisioned that, and that's why $1 million of that, what we believed was going to be probably not 4 million, somewhere less than that, was pushed into the 2021 operating budget. Just like we are right now, saying, okay, now we had projects that got delayed because of COVID. We believe in the end of 2021, there's about 1.5 million that we're not going to need. And we've pushed that in to help cover the 2022 expenses, and therefore lets us keep the tax rate the same as we did this year.
Okay.
Obviously, without that, we would be looking at these numbers going, okay, wow, we need another 1.5 million if we were really at par. Now, the district has always had a fairly conservative approach to money on hand for contingency. So typically it's been in that 15 to 20% of our operating budget range. So when you look at our number today, when you take the 4 million that the comptroller says, hey, you have too much money, and you take out the million that we said, yeah, you're right, we pushed that already into the budget. About another $600,000 of that is allocated funds, specifically in reserve funds for apparatus and buildings. So those have specific purposes in the future. So in the end of the day, now that cash on hand, that extra funds is about 2.5 million, which again, whether that's the right number or not, is always up for debate. The school districts have a specific number that they can have a maximum amount. The fire district doesn't have that same level of guidance from the state to say, you should only have X amount. We work with our auditor, we work with our legal counsel and our finance team to figure out what is that number, what should that number be? And a lot of it comes down to the what ifs. We run a fire department and there's a lot of what ifs, right? And a lot of those what ifs can come in the overtime arena. We've had several firefighters injured. We have firefighters that are out for extended periods for whatever reason, disability, illnesses, whatever. And we have to cover that. We can't just say, well, we're just not going to do that stuff tomorrow. We'll shut down that company. No, that doesn't work that way in the fire service. So our overtime expenses, we have to keep those in mind. Again, whether the number that we use, and let's just say it's 2.5, whether that's the right number or not. One of the biggest issues that the state comptroller had with that is we don't have a policy that says what we want that number to be. And that's what we said. We agree. You're right. We probably should have a policy that says we're going to have a contingency fund of 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever the number is.
Right.
We're going to, at the end of our budget period, we want that amount sitting in the bank just in case. So that's what we're in the process of now. We'll put that together and we'll roll that into our upcoming budget season to say, okay, at the end of the year, and our 1.5, we believe that we can carry over. Maybe that number changes. Maybe it goes up a
Right.
little because we say, okay, 15% is the right number.
Okay.
And then we look at all our numbers and figure out what we think.
Thanks for your answer, Bill. Appreciate it.
So I will just note that's what I was actually going to recommend. So I'm glad to hear that. We did the same thing a few years ago. So we take a conservative approach to budgeting. One of the difference, we have additional revenues, but our additional revenues are not fixed. We don't know what the economy is going to be like the next year. We don't know what sales tax revenues are going to be here. We've always taken a conservative approach, which means you end up with, when the economy is running strong, you end up with a surplus. So again, what we did is we created a policy that basically gives a range, and that if we're above that range, we take those funds and we apply them to next year to keep the tax rate down, or it has to go into there, or as you mentioned, it dedicated funds, so like a capital project fund to.
And that was the other thing that the comptroller had mentioned is you have these funds, but they're unallocated.
Right.
If you think you're going to have them, then flush them into a fund that then the next commission next year, if I'm not here or whoever's not here,
There's a plan.
they don't just get to say, oh, let's use it for X, Y, Z.
It's not a
It's
slush
in a
fund,
dedicated
right.
fund of
Yep.
use it for fire equipment, use
Yep.
it for buildings, use it for tax, tax rate.
Right.
So
relief.
I do want to separate these two issues. I mean, this is, again, we've received a lot of comment. And so again, I would strongly encourage you to put that into place. Again, we did the same thing. A previous administration, actually a couple administrations ago, got hit with the exact same thing. They happen to be saving up money for the rec center and the library, because if you save up the money in advance, it's a lot less expensive for the taxpayers than to bond it. Bonding expense adds about 50% to the cost. So they were saving it up on these, what I call windfall sales tax years, but they made the same mistake. They did not allocate it, and they got dinged by the comptroller. So it's the same thing. Again, put that policy in place. It will help a lot with regards to the obviously the comptroller, but I think also the residents like to know that fiscal responsibility is there. The thing I will also say is I wouldn't want the fund balance to be too low, because the same thing, there were governments in trouble when the COVID hit and the revenues went down. We weren't one of them. Why? Because we budget conservatively. And so, I wouldn't want to see you getting away from that, but again, it's important that I think that those policies are in place. So we don't have any authority over that. That's just an opinion.
Yeah, no, and we agree. I mean, that's what we took away from the comptroller's report is, we need a policy in place.
Any other, before we open it up to the public for comment? Okay, I'm going to start online. Is there anyone online who wishes to comment? Is there anyone in the house who wishes to comment?
I apologize for the delay. I do have a hand raised if
Okay.
you're looking for a virtual
Yep,
comment.
go ahead.
Jim Sorrentino has raised his hand.
Jim?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. It was very helpful to hear the comments from Bill and Mark. So I think that filled in a lot of the void in terms of people having information. So I think that's very helpful. One of the comments has to do with the process. This project has been a dream of the Henrietta Fire Department for the past 10 years. So it's not something that just came up the other day. And there's been really no comprehensive information given to citizens. There's been no mailing. There's been no public informational meeting by the fire district. And I think that creates a problem. And people wonder, why aren't they sharing information? Don't they view the taxpayer as a customer and feel any sense of accountability? So I think that's this also is, once this is done, which it sounds like from the board and supervisor, that's where you're leaning. It's nothing else is going to, that's the last thing that people will have an opportunity to say. And this is, even though it's a major change, it's not subject to any taxpayer review or approval. It's not subject to a referendum vote. There are referendum votes that are much less consequential than this one. So that's a general thing about process and information. Now, another more specific thing that no one has mentioned is about the staffing of the West Henrietta station. And from the information that was provided to the Brighton Town Board and Supervisor, and there was an exchange of Q&As that after they received the proposal, they asked specific questions. And one of them had to do with the staffing. And the response from the Henrietta Fire District was that they plan to staff West Henrietta with volunteers as of January 1. I'm not sure where the volunteers are coming from, with the support of career firefighters at Pinnacle Road, Station 5, and Bailey Road, Station 4. And some of the people, well, it's been on social media, but also in individual discussions, expressed concern for basically, if you're taking on additional responsibility, but yet using existing resources that the community has gotten accustomed to having available, how will that affect them and the potential reduction in response time? And as the district knows, a very high percentage of calls for help are for medical, in which the fire district has the capacity to respond to many of those. However, they're limited in the sense that they're not staffed with certified EMS with advanced life support, and they can't transport a person. So if a person is, feeling very sick and maybe thought that they had a heart attack, the firefighters may be there first, but there's been an exchange that people were expecting an ambulance and someone that could provide advanced life support. So I know this is not a Q&A, but I'm just sharing my information, and my comments are to the board. That was the instructions. So that's a second point.
Okay, can we pause before you go much farther so we can address
Sure.
these things?
Well, is this a public hearing or is this a debate?
I will, but they have to come to me. So let me, just a couple things. I just wanted to
So this isn't a public hearing then? No?
No, it is a public hearing.
You're not here to hear the public.
We are here to hear the public. I'm asking you to pause because you've essentially brought up a bunch of points. I'm saying you'll have another chance to continue. It's just,
Okay.
you brought up a whole bunch of points, and I just would like to address or ask the fire district to address them.
Okay. Fine.
So I will mention that I did request and get a copy of the full proposal submission from the town of Brighton, as well as their minutes. I haven't had a chance to review them all just yet. I've shared that with the town board. We'll be going over those. I will say from my cursory review, I did not see the comment that you had addressed So I'm going to ask the fire district. I didn't see anything about there that it would be staffed with volunteers, other than there was some, I do remember there was a discussion about, I'll call it like an explorer type program where possibility of volunteers, especially college kids who want to get involved in the fire district could participate. But that's my recollection. I was wondering if you could address, respond to just.
Okay.
Jim, I'm not talking to you. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, you said you.
Chief. Sorry.
No worries. Mr. Sorrentino, thank you for calling with those questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability. So to your first point, you are correct, and this was discussed back in 2009, 2010 about the Henrietta Fire District taking over West Brighton. Due to a number of issues back then, which was well before my time, that did not come to fruition, and that came under contract with the city of Rochester. That contract was renewed roughly every 5 years. And it is my understanding that when that contract went to be renewed this year, there was some issues. So this whole process actually started when we became involved in this towards the end of May of this year. So this has been on an extremely accelerated program for us to try and get all the ducks in a row, so to speak, to have this to be where we are today. As far as the volunteers go, that was one of the initial discussions. It really was. It was, would it be sufficient for us to staff the West Henrietta Road station with volunteers and then cover the remainder of the, area from the stations on Pinnacle Road and on Bailey Road. And through quite a bit of investigation and brain picking, for lack of a better term, on our part, it was really determined that the best way to provide that service was to put 2 firefighters and an officer from the career side on an engine company running out of the West Brighton station. However, put a second engine company there, which would be a volunteer engine, which would allow the volunteers to bunk in overnight. And one of 2 things would happen. Either we would be operating a second engine company running out of that firehouse, or depending on the number of volunteers, they would supplement the staffing on the career engine. So instead of rolling out the door with 3 people, they may be rolling out the door with 5 people or 6 people. So that is where we stand with that. To Supervisor Schultz's point, yes, we have talked about the way that the firehouse is set up, that we would be able to convert one of the areas of the firehouse on the 2nd floor into a bunk area, for lack of a better term, so that we could recruit college kids to live there and be that extra personnel on the piece of apparatus to respond. To the other point regarding us responding on EMS calls, you are correct that seconds count. I can tell you without divulging anything from a HIPAA standpoint, that we responded to a home off of Calkins Road this weekend. And it was for a female that was not conscious, not breathing. Fire personnel were on scene first. They were able to administer 1 shock, and that patient is alive and well now. And that is the 2nd or 3rd time that has happened in the last month, where fire personnel have arrived on scene first, beating the ambulance. And in fact, one of them was right by the Bailey Road station. They were able to resuscitate that individual, and the crew actually ran into her at Wegmans 2 weeks later and were able to talk to her. So you're correct, seconds count. And that's the point of having those strategically located fire stations and supplementing, any volunteer staff on the West Henrietta Road station with that career engine company, so it can go out the door. So if, God forbid, somebody has something at Texas Roadhouse at the corner of Jefferson and West Henrietta Road, that engine's going to be on scene in 45 seconds, and we're going to be able to meet that person at Wegmans or wherever else again.
I will also note that if it is a cardiac arrest or stroke, or Just because they show up doesn't mean the ambulance doesn't also show up. So they might administer the first aid, and if that person needs transport, they're transported in the ambulance. So it's not an either or scenario, just to be clear. And I will also note that I know of at least 2 individuals who have expressed that their parents, their father suffered a heart attack. And the first on site was the firefighter who provided CPR to keep that person's brain alive till they could be fully resuscitated and transported to the hospital. So it does make a difference.
I'll say this to Mr. Sorrentino. I don't like my taxes going up because of a new fire station. However, when you have a fire at your house, these guys show up and they do the job. When someone's sick, like my mother, the fire department gets there first. They do an assessment before the ambulance gets there, and they have my mother's health in the forefront before the ambulance gets there. I've had a grandchild that the firemen were there first. I was glad they got there. So, you know, we talk about money, and it's important, and we're all fiscally responsible on this board, but the job they do, sometimes you can't put a dollar amount on, and timing is everything. And we have a lot of senior citizens in this community that when they show up, they're happy that they're there. So although I'm one of those very conservative people, I don't like to spend my money on frivolous things. When it comes to health and human beings, let's do what we have to do. So I commend the fire department for what they do when they do show up, even though the ambulance they're coming out. So thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you, sir.
I'm going to go back to Mr. Sorrentino because I believe you had other points.
Yes. And if I can, I know I'm not talking directly to the chief, but I'd like to respond to a couple of things. On the first issue that I raised in terms of the process and communication with the community, you mentioned that the district became re-involved back in May in terms of moving forward on this project, and it's September. So there was a window during that time in which there could have been some direct mail, there could have been informational meetings. But so I just want to make that point that I think the lack of information and communication creates problems and misunderstandings, and it can be prevented. Lots of people, even in public service, can treat their customers with good relations. Now, on the issue of the staffing, I'm still. First of all, I guess I'll point out to Steve that if you look at the minutes that came from that meeting, you'll find the statement that I referred to, and I believe I did a.
I believe, just Jim, I'm just going to save you time. I believe you. As I said, I just got them today, so I only had a chance to skim them.
Right. But I sent.
And I was probably looking at a different portion where they were talking about, because I was looking, there was a discussion of the full-time.
Okay.
At least the proposal.
But it's on page 3, and I sent you a screenshot of that. But I'm still not clear from what the chief has said that when is the full-time crew, the additional 12 people, going to be assuming responsibility at West Henrietta?
January 1st.
So, okay, and at the time when this was, you had the meeting with Brighton, it was somewhat hedged in terms of not giving a definite time. Maybe you didn't know at that time. And it did state that, it would be your hope, but in the interim, you would have it staffed, but with volunteers. So thank you for that clarification.
Welcome.
So the other thing we've talked, and first of all, I guess to respond to the comment from Mr. Barley. I don't believe I've ever commented today or in the past about money issues. So I don't know where that came from, but I think for the record, that's a misrepresentation of the comments that I made tonight and other times. The last one.
Mr. Farley's comments were just in general, how.
It was just in general, not
Oh,
towards
well,
you.
okay, I heard you talking to me, so I assumed that it was in reference to me. The last point I'd like to make is there's been a lot of discussion and concern, and as well as comments tonight about the needs in this community for response to people who are feeling a medical emergency, usually at home or in a workplace or whatever. And it's my understanding, based on the last information that the district has published, which was back in 2019, there's no information from 2020, that the medical emergency calls represent 46% of the calls. And we do have, a volunteer, well, it's a volunteer, it's a joint, a combined service of volunteers and paid career staff for ambulance and EMS. And I have suggested, and there's been a lack of any interest, to do what many other towns have done in Monroe and other areas, to do a study about the needs of the community from various perspectives, and looking hard at the numbers in terms of what kinds of issues are there in the community. What's the response time? What's the response time for emergency medical and the accessibility of ambulance services? It's my understanding that they have similar standards as fire departments do for response times. So many other places have
Jim?
taken a path. Well, can I finish my sentence?
Go ahead.
So many other towns have pursued applying for a state grant, which is available, to study the issues of emergency medical and fire services. One, so that they can assess the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for improvement, and look at options. And that's something that I would hope, but I don't have any confidence that it will happen in the town of Brighton. So that's the end of my comments. You don't need to respond.
Well, we're going to respond.
Jim, I would like to respond. I'm the liaison for not only the fire department, but for CHS also.
Mhm.
And they do have the number of calls they go out on, and what those calls are for, and the response time.
And they have a similar standard to the NFPA. And they publish that regularly, possibly quarterly. Certainly it's full details are in their annual report. It's available. I don't know if they've got it available online. If not, you can come to the town clerk's office. We have a copy here in town hall. So those are published. I will note that the snippet or the link for the grant you sent me was for a government consolidation grant, which is to look at, are there two adjacent fire districts, for instance, that could save money for the residents by combining? And so one of the things I actually have on my list is I would be happy. There's also a shared services grant as another possibility. I'd be happy to work with Supervisor Melee to see if we could get some of those monies. So for instance, maybe some of the improvements that you had to table or postpone, if we could get those done through that consolidation grant and or through the shared services grant. So I didn't see, the one you shared me certainly did not say anything about just doing some third-party independent assessment of their response calls. We certainly don't have the expertise for that. And again, they do that. Both groups do that. Now, if you don't trust their numbers and you want an independent, we can take a look at that. Again, you talk about these other towns in Monroe County nebulous, by all means, share me an example of one of these. That
I have included
preferably
them
a
in the
resolution that
past.
someone has passed.
I have included them in the past. I'd be glad to write you again and share them.
Okay.
Very quickly, Brighton
I will
has
state
used them in
that-
the past.
I will state I have received no such, so I don't know if your email got lost. The email you sent me.
Okay. But did you want to hear? Did you want to hear examples, or do you want to just talk over me?
Jim, you asked me
Yeah.
to let you finish. Please do the same. The thing you had sent me was for a consolidation grant. It was a screenshot of their stuff, and I don't remember what the third thing was, but none of them was specifically for that kind of review. So again, I do not want to take up time in the public hearing. I'd rather you send it. You can send it to the town board, townboard@henrietta.org. Go ahead and send those to us, because again, you speaking them, we're then going to have to wait to get the minutes back to be able to transcribe it. It makes much more sense for you just to send me the links, or send the town board the links to those studies, and we'll take a look at them and see if they make sense for the town.
Well, I would like to finish with just the ones that I mentioned. I started with Brighton, Penfield, Webster, Victor. So those are a few. And also I've communicated to you in the past that the Center for Governmental Research, which is a local nonprofit, has done numerous studies, both in Monroe County and other counties, looking at this issue, and they're funded by the New York State, grants. I don't know if.
So again, by all means, send me a link to one. If those towns you listed, they should have, if you're familiar with them and they've done it, you should be able to send me a link, if nothing else, of the resolution that they put forth calling for that study. Because I'm honest, Jim, that some of the stuff.
I'm not on your staff, Steve. You
Jim?
can call them and find out yourself.
Jim,
This is ridiculous.
please let me finish.
Oh, okay.
Some of the stuff that you've claimed, certain things have said one thing, they've said another. So again, if this is an interest of yours in having the town do this, and you are aware of these things, then if you've seen them, just send me the link. That's all I'm asking. Because
I've sent them before, and you've expressed you don't have an interest, you don't want to investigate. You've used the term investigation versus assessing. So your position is very
never
clear.
sent me a link to one of these.
Okay, I told you about CGR. Their phone number is in
With
the.
CGR, thank you.
So there's a half a dozen right there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody in-house? Anybody else online? So the other thing I would like to also potentially approach about is for Station 3 on Riverview Drive is within the local waterfront revitalization district that we are in the process of creating. We're putting together a local waterfront revitalization plan. And that is basically a plan that we put forward where we put a whole bunch of potential projects. And I'm talking a lot. Like there's 17 major categories and there's probably 5 or 6 subcategories in each of those major categories. So the idea is to get any LWRP funding, it has to be in your LWRP plan. The thing I point out to everybody, there was somebody I had mentioned the possibility for the transportation museum, and they were a little nervous. So I don't know if we have enough volunteers for that. I pointed out to them, just because it's in the plan doesn't mean you have to do it, but if it's not in the plan, you can't get funding for it. And so one of the things I would love to add to that is upgrades to the Station 3. Especially, so it currently has a community room on the second floor. It is not obviously handicap accessible. To my knowledge, there isn't much in the way of bunk rooms. I could be wrong, but
There's none.
yeah, okay. So, in terms of better protection, if we're looking, so part of that idea of the waterfront revitalization plan is to, as the name implies, revitalize your waterfront, bring more people to the waterfront. It would seem to me it would be beneficial to have additional protection there. Furthermore, included in it, we're looking at some things like there'll be some boat launches, canoe, whether one might be a small boat, another might be a canoe, a kayak canoe. I know they currently have a water team, but to my knowledge, they don't have any place handy to immediately nearby to launch. So for instance, one of the things we could potentially look at doing under this grant would be to build a launch so that they could launch if there was, God forbid, somebody's motorboat catches on fire, they could potentially respond right from the Riverview station. And so that would all be providing funding. And then basically the town, and it doesn't have to be the town, it can be other organizations as well. It's a 20% match. So the state funds 80%, we fund 20%. I would love to work with the district and the leadership at Station 3 to put some of this improvements in there. They're not going to cover a new fire truck and things like that, but improvements to the station, the boat launch, things that directly affect the riverfront. And again, making the community room handicap accessible. So when members of the waterfront community want to meet there, that provides an opportunity. That's something I would love to pursue because again, anything we can do to help out the district is great because then also that it not only helps protect our residents, but that's also money that doesn't have to come out of the residents, the property owners' pockets. So don't know who the correct person to meet on that, but
Yeah, just to clarify, the district would certainly love to be part of that discussion. The district actually doesn't own Station 3. Station 3 is a
Understood.
private organization. The Genesee Valley is a private organization. So we can certainly liaison, get you in touch with the right folks at Station 3 to work through those projects. The district obviously would have a benefit in that. If there's a boat launch there, obviously volunteers are running out of that firehouse. So there is definitely a benefit for the district. So we would certainly want to be involved, but it would, be a
I
venture
understand.
between the town board and the Genesee Valley Fire
Right.
Department. But yes,
I
definitely.
just look at that some of the stuff as, if we decide to then go after one of those projects, we'd have to figure out who's doing the matching funds, how much of that is from Genesee Valley, how much of that's from the town, how much of that is from the fire district.
Yeah, we would have to evaluate our
Right.
legal team as to whether legally we can enter into such a.
So
an
again,
adventure.
you're not actually entering into it'd be if we then went out to execute on one of those plans, that's what we would have to figure out.
Right.
It could be donations, right? They could be a GoFundMe campaign.
Sure.
If we get,
Although we're not allowed to raise funds either. Sorry.
I'm not, right, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, well, I understand.
we're in the same boat,
Sure,
so.
yeah.
But like I said, that just, is there a Friends of the, can the volunteer houses? raise
Yes,
funds?
each volunteer house, because they are a fire department within the state of New York, they can actually raise funds.
Okay.
And most of the departments do that. The district as a district obviously cannot because we're benefactors of tax rolls.
Tax, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the same restrictions.
Yeah,
but-
exactly.
So,
But the company can
so
certainly,
the company could,
Yep.
so the company could do
they
that.
could,
drive,
they could go
sure.
off and say, we're going to do this specific project and really get a lot of folks behind that. Especially if it's going to benefit that whole area, that whole
Yeah,
community.
absolutely.
It should be a real no-brainer.
The other thing, and I don't think that there's anything available, but the other thing, one of the things that is available for is the acquisition of additional property. So if there was need to expand and there was one of those adjacent properties came up for sale, it does actually cover acquisition of property. One of the things we'll have to check from a legality standpoint, it has to be for public use,
Usually,
but the school districts count, towns count. I believe fire departments count as well. But
Sure.
that's one of the things, the New York State Department of State will be the ones who answer that question, not us. But like I said, it just, there's a lot of possibilities there to potentially, because I know that's one of, well, look, all three of the stations are old, and, that one's kind of shoehorned in to where it's at, and it'd be nice to be able to fix it up.
Great.
Anything else? Becky, do we have anyone else online? Oh, I've got someone in the audience here. Could you do me a favor and come up to the microphone, or if you prefer, you can come up to the one at the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony Camera, 39 Clooney Drive. So, Mr. Supervisor, my question is simply, would it be rezoning the properties adjacent to Station 3? So that would enhance with the purpose of the properties to enhance the project?
I don't think there's any rezoning necessary.
No.
It would just be because a firehouse is allowed in, I think it's allowed in any district.
Well, it's already there anyways.
Right, but so
pre-existing.
basically it would just be if, for instance, if one of the houses next door wanted to sell and they wanted to add housing for the volunteers, and
Yes, sir.
because to my knowledge, there isn't a whole lot of space right there to add. Maybe they could build on top of the garage, but there really isn't a whole lot of place at Station 3 to put the bunk space.
Yeah, I've been there many times. And
But in terms of from the LWRP, if you have ideas on other things to potentially improve, so like we're building a Riverwalk trail, we're looking at, these are some of the projects that we've got on there.
yeah,
The LWRP meeting is coming up, but you feel free to send suggestions to supervisor@henrietta.org. I'm happy to hear any of them and bring them to those meetings.
His storage comes to mind quickly is a storage space for a rescue boat. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Good idea.
Yep. Okay, anyone online, Becky?
Nothing online.
Anyone else in-house? Anybody on the town board?
I just want to thank Commissioner Heisler for giving me a call last night. I had some other questions, and thanks for giving me a call back after our meeting last night. I appreciate it.
And thank you for both Commissioner Heist and Chief Scholak for your presentation tonight and for answering questions. So again, procedurally, we've got a lot of stuff to go over, and our plan is that we will resolve this in 2 weeks, so at the next town board meeting. But hearing no further questions, I'm going to call this public hearing to a close. Actually, before I do that, there was a couple comments that today is a Jewish holiday. Since we're not going to resolve to next meeting, should we maybe hold open the public hearing?
It's up to the board.
What do you guys think? That way, if anybody who wasn't able to attend because of the Jewish holiday, they'd have a chance at 2 weeks from now.
That's fine with me.
Anyone?
That's
Everyone
fine.
good with that? Okay, so I'm going to keep the public hearing open. The public hearing will resume 7 o'clock Wednesday, September 22nd. And then again, the plan is to vote that evening. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll give people a chance to exit before we move on to resolutions. It'll also give me time to fire up my.
Does our interpreter need?
Right.
Okay, take a, yeah. Probably needs a little.
Yep.
He needs a break. All right, I'll take a break.
Take a 5-minute break.
5 minutes?
Sure. We are going to take a 5-minute break before we get on to the resolutions. Yeah, we should have mentioned anytime you just needed to take.
We appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a lot of cancellations for tonight.
I just wanted to do testing here. So I paid my taxes today, it says to the secretary, I heard a rumor that I handed you this check for this much money, that it's actually allowed to shake the
Today was not a good day because I was in meetings all day, but do you want me to shake your hand now?
Oh, I don't want to, it's just, I thought.
Well, thank you for taking the time to come in. I think it's great that people
Let's spend years.
take part.
That'll be fun. Thank you all.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take
Have a
care.
good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we've had a couple people whose schedule seems to have changed because they're just never available. So, of course, our primary interpreter was silly and ran for office. So.
She's busy.
Right. Correct. Yeah, so we're getting, you know how we have the two separate, or maybe we had two separate meetings, it's actually going to be combined, but we'll probably put a break in between the special use permits and the regular. We're just doing them that way because we ran into a problem with the special use permit meeting ran long. And of course, it just so happened that the topic that was running long was a hookah shop. And at the town board meeting, we had elementary schools in to do a presentation. So it was a horrible mix. And I said, I don't ever want this to happen again. So we decided to do it that we'll just, and today was an example where we sat around for half an hour because one of the permits that was supposed to be on the agenda basically got withdrawn. It didn't have to be on. And so this way we can basically take a 5 or 10 minute break and then get right into the meeting. So. Good. That'd be awesome. You know, one of the things that's always frustrated me with civil service is like, one of the things I've always wanted to do is hire somebody as a town, as one of the clerks, not town clerk, but like as a clerk, because we have a lot of clerk positions or other positions, someone who is also an interpreter. And so we would essentially have somebody on staff and we effectively pay one rate when they're interpreting and one rate when they're the office clerk, or again, other position. The problem is civil service has no way for me to specify I need an office clerk with interpreting service. So, or interpreting skills, or even one that also drives me nuts. I would love to hire office clerks who have sign language skills so that when a deaf person comes in, they can communicate. And nope, I can't mandate that I can mandate bilingual, that they can speak Spanish, but I cannot mandate that they have to have sign language skills. And I'm very much aware of the difference between sign language skills and interpreting skills.
Probably more deaf people in Henrietta than we do Spanish.
We do. We actually have more Arab people than we have Spanish people. We have more Nepalese people than we have Spanish people. But it's the system has some issues, but. Right. Right. Yeah. We're ready to resume, Becky? Are we muted or?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm ready to resume if you guys are ready to resume.
Not quite. Gotta wait for him. We have to wait for the interpreter to come back.
To be honest, I don't have a problem if we do the first two resolutions since they are largely procedural. We'll just wait for them till when we get to the Article 10 vote.
Okay, Mr. Supervisor, and fellow board members, I have resolution 19 244, 2021 to authorize bills payable for August 13th, 2021 through today, September 8th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Question for Linda, why the Exhibit A seems higher than normal? Was there some, or maybe Mike, you know that answer?
I did see it. I forgot which
Hold
one.
on.
I apologize. I think there was, there was a big one in there, but I'm not sure if that would have been actually for.
Oh, it was higher than normal? Yes.
Actual. And
Yeah, what was there a large expenditure on there, or was it just because it's 3 or 4 weeks worth of bills?
No, there were 4 large things. One is our central service garage did the administrative chargebacks to all the departments. That was approximately $350,000. We paid back another almost $300,000 to contractors who put deposits down in lieu of a cash bond. And we had about $200 and some thousand in paving and concrete work that the highway department finished up.
Great. Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. This one was largely procedural, so we figured we'd go ahead.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution 19-245, 2021 to declare intent to be the lead agency for seeker review for the Lehigh Ridge subdivision for the proposed 113 single-family homes in the residential R1 15 zoning district.
Second.
So in this particular one, we'll be working closely with the planning board. The planning board's going to be looking at the site plan and providing a lot of seeker input as well. Just because of the earlier public meeting, the fact that there is a specially or a town board approval required for the clustering and what I'll call the out front nature that residents have already been reaching out to the town board with questions about this in discussions with the director of engineering and planning. We felt it was appropriate that the town board take lead agency on this particular project rather than the planning board. So just wanted to, but like I said, I do expect us to work closely with the planning board on this one. Any other comment? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 19-246, 2021 to recommend approval of the site plan for the proposed Aptitude Rochester Rock River Apartments and the reduced setback buffer to 3940 East River Road.
Seconded.
So for those who recall, we had a mixed use development on what's was typically referred to as the Larkin property. And we had concern over the location of the driveway. They were able to acquire the property at 3940 East River Road so that their road could come out roughly where the driveway for that house was located. The house is a historic house. And so because we're going to be modifying the site plan, including the front, effectively the front entrance to that property, was decided it came up under an Article 10 vote. The initial plans that they had put together had some of the buildings within the 150-foot buffer. And so the Historic Site Committee brought those concerns to the planning board. The planning board worked with the developer, and I believe the developer even went to a Historic Site Committee meeting to get feedback from them. And they modified their plans to push everything out of that buffer except the road. The road will be inside that buffer. However, in discussions with the Historic Site Committee and the planning board, we felt it was important that that road be at the top of the hill to improve sight lines from motorist safety standpoint, and that if it's just the road going through there, it will not have a significant adverse impact on the historic site itself. Again, it's not technically going through the property itself, but it is going within the buffer. So the idea of this is we are approving the modification to the driveway entrance, and we're also basically recommending that they make sure that the parking lots and buildings are outside the 150-foot buffer, but that they allow the road to be within the buffer. That's our recommendation to the planning board. Again, the planning board and Historic Site Committee were part of those discussions, and we do have a letter from the Historic Site Committee essentially stating the same. Any other discussion? Did I miss anything, Don? At all? Anything online? Hearing no further comment, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 19-247, 2021 to authorize the negotiation of a contract for the LED upgrade of streetlights in the town of Henrietta.
Second. So I did, Wendell saw that they were not, the top recipient reached out to me. I did inform them that this resolution does call if we're unable to, told them to don't throw away your response just yet. That if we're unable to come to contractual terms with Centric, then we would be able to, or we would then try to reach terms with Wendell. So the two, as we've talked about, were very close in their scoring, and they were separated from the rest of the pack. There were a lot of good responses, but Wendell's and Centrica's really stood out. And based on, the way we did the scoring is we had the categories that we had defined for the in the request for proposals, and we had basically assigned weights for them. But when people were filling out the score sheets, none of those weights were there. None of the totals were being tallied. So people did not know the tallies until I actually plugged them into the spreadsheet. And that's when we found out that, again, Centrica ended up with the most points. I will note that pretty much everybody in the room said, yeah, we really liked Wendell's and Centrica's. So there were 6 people who responded. We actually only counted the 4. We did not count my score or the Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert's score. And we just did that because we were running the process we felt it would be better to keep our scores out of it. I will note that it didn't change the results if you added our scores in.
Huh.
You know, so like I said, it was very happy with the responses. I think we're gonna be very happy with the results and see savings for the town as well as a reduction in energy and therefore a reduction in greenhouse gases. Anything else? Craig, if you want to come on up. Oh, wait till you get up to that microphone.
Thank you, and I apologize. It's going to take a couple minutes here. Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert. Since Don is here, the New York Power Authority did reach out to you and I yesterday. I talked to them on the phone. They are interested in providing an analysis of what they can do. They can't, they, being a government agency, are not allowed to respond to RFPs. They also do not continue or provide what's called a performance contract, which is what we went out to proposal for these companies for. But they are interested in providing us an analysis of what the New York Power Authority can do to help us in a similar method. I tried to send some of this information to Don to even see if this is, you know, what legal standpoint this is. It's my precursory review that it's really just a upgrade of the lights themselves to LEDs. We would still owe a fee to RG&E or to the owner of the light now as to what's the lifespan of the luminaire that's there now. We would still have to pay that out, and all we would be doing is then just upgrading the LEDs. We wouldn't own anything else. Everything else would stay the same. The maintenance to RG&E would stay the same, and all those other costs would stay the same, which is why we initially didn't really want to go that route. So they've been pushing pretty heavy and asking for a meeting in the next day or two. I don't have any problem with hearing them out. If we can find some time, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that new predicament or new information. Since I had Don here, I had the ability to kind of maybe explain that a little better than my email this morning.
Yeah, I mean, the town is free to not go with the responses to the RFP and try something else if it wants to.
We didn't request any other bids or information based off their proposal though. So that's my hesitancy to it.
You're not bound until you sign a contract. So.
Right.
And you would be negotiating it. And according to this, we have to vote on it anyway. So if we find out that through them, it might be a better deal.
I wouldn't stop negotiating.
Yeah.
And we just don't, because again, to Mike's point, as this resolution calls, once it's successfully negotiated, it'll be brought back to the town board for final approval. And I can't sign it until that approval is made. So, but in the meantime, we would take a look at this. I'll be blunt. I would be shocked if we want to go with that route, because in all the analysis we've done, all the preliminary analysis points that the amount of savings we get from buying the equipment back from RG&E and owning it ourselves saves a lot of money.
Yeah.
And even if we outsource the maintenance was the Centrica response, right? I think it was $45,000 annual maintenance. So they had an actual annual maintenance right in the response. The savings from not paying RG&E for that equipment is greater than that 45,000.
We agree. We're
significantly.
Yeah, there's a potential of $400,000 a year in savings.
So I just don't see how the NFPA solution is going to.
So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that information, and we'll present it when we get some more to get some understanding of the analysis. I just wanted to make sure, since we didn't include that in the bid, nobody else has had the ability to bid on that kind of.
Well, Ferguson, that was really kind of Ferguson's solution. Ferguson's was a 1-for-1.
Right,
solution.
and they were the lowest scoring of our group
because of that.
Right.
So
I guess that would I guess it'd be pretty similar.
We did say that we would accept when people asked, well, can I offer different solutions? We said we'd take any, but
yeah,
we made it clear that the contract, what was it called? Contract service? No.
Performance contract.
Performance contract was something we were interested in.
Right. Okay. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Thanks, Greg.
Any other questions on this? Hearing no further discussion, please call a vote.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Right, you're
Aye.
too soon. There you go.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Apparently, we're all getting hungry and trying to answer too quickly. Fellow town board members, I have resolution 19-248 to submit a transportation alternatives program application for sidewalk improvements on Calkins Road from East Henrietta Road to Pinnacle Road.
Second.
I am very much in favor of this idea. I have had my little guy ride up that road and it is terrifying.
I will.
Go ahead,
I'll
Mike,
add
because
that-
I know you were just there.
I'll add that, yeah, when I was, coming up the road today, I noticed that we'll be, it appears that we'll just be putting the extensions in from Pinnacle. From Pinnacle to the asphalt areas, because it doesn't look like it'd be possible to put actual sidewalks in, because you'd have to add curbs, and then if you went on the other side of the asphalt, it would be, it'd be cutting down trees, moving utility poles, several things like that. And then the extension also from East Henrietta Road down to the asphalt area. But I am very much in favor of this. Last year, my son got hit by a car right in that area. It was, I don't honestly believe the sidewalks would have done anything because where he was hit, but obviously there's a lot of traffic comes through there. There's a lot of distraction from drivers. And so, yes, by all means, if anything we could do to prevent that, I'm all in favor.
I will note this for this reason, it was mentioned last night where we don't have verbatim minutes. Council member Safranik had recommended, and we agreed that we make sure that when we do the resurfacing or whatever's necessary for the asphalt sidewalk portion, that we color it or otherwise make it very clear that it is pedestrian and bicycle use and not vehicular use, because there are some people who decide to use it to go around somebody waiting to make a left-hand turn. Which obviously, if they do that to an oncoming bicyclist or pedestrian, there's going to be catastrophic results. So I just want that on the record. And I would like to thank Rachel Sherman for collecting all the petition signatures. One of the things that helps a TAP CMAQ application is to demonstrate community support. So she was able to get a lot of signatures from the residents in the area on a petition. So that will absolutely help with the application. Anything else? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 19-249, 2021, to install rumble strips at the intersection of Wildbrow Road and Wildflower Drive.
Second.
Any discussion?
Since this is kind of a newer traffic control device that we haven't really done in town before, it might be interesting to go back after they've been installed for, some time, 6 months, a year or something like that, and see what the feelings of the neighbors are at that point.
I would agree. I will say that I'm sure Rick Klein will keep us well informed of what's going on there. He takes a strong interest in that intersection. He lives it's right out his front door. So I'm sure if I ask him to give us monthly reports, he'll do that.
I appreciate the creativity too in looking for other methods of controlling traffic. It's been demonstrated over and over that speed bumps are not necessarily the best traffic control device, but so I think it's good to start exploring some other methods that might help curb some of the issues that the town faces.
I know we have been getting a lot of thanks for the, when we've been, us and or Monroe County has been locating the radar signs, as one resident put it. I've never seen so many brake lights outside my house before. It was really refreshing to see. So like I said, it's great that the effort that our highway department and, other departments like the engineering department to help plan these things have been putting into to try to control traffic, because unfortunately, we have absolutely seen an increase in distracted and or impatient motorists. So.
Yeah, actually, my son and I were driving home the other day and we watched a driver clip a bicyclist and not stop. So, we stopped and made sure that he was okay before he went on, but yeah.
Any further discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution 19-250, 2021 to call for a public hearing regarding the establishment of extension number 222 to the Henrietta Sewer District number 1 for 1824, 1832, 1840, and 1844 Lehigh Station Road.
Second,
Any discussion?
I'm really glad to see this moving forward. This is, I think, going to be a real benefit for those in that area.
I'm just surprised it's been so long. That's,
Yeah.
that we still have people on septic in that area.
Right, it's needed to be
The
done.
problem is without the ability to get community development block grants or the funding from the ARPA, or to be able to do what I refer to as self-bonding, it was outside of the people's financial, the last time it went around, it was something like averaged over $1,200 per property per year for 20-something years. It was not affordable. So now it's under $200.
That's great.
And I know the one resident I talked to was extremely happy when I told him.
Well, and just what it's going to add to the value of their home. It's
Right.
just incredible. So
Yeah, I spoke to residents on Lehigh and they're very happy because I guess their line was tilted, so it really costed even more money to get it done before this grant
Wow.
and stuff came in. So it is very needed and the residents are very happy about it.
Any further discussion? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranik,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 19-251, 2021 to authorize professional appraisal services with Thurston Casale and Ryan LLC.
Seconded.
Any discussion? I saw our assessor enter the room. I don't know, did you have something you wanted to share, or you're just in case we have questions? Okay.
Have they done work for us before?
No, they have not done any work for us. They come highly recommended.
Thank you.
Always good to see your smiling face here. No need to be afraid to speak to us. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Becky, am I seeing the membership list? Is there anyone on besides you?
Well, Naomi Pless is on, but she came in person, so I'm not sure
Okay.
if she's actually on or not.
She was listening in the car. I just want to make sure, because if it's only you, I'm not going to keep asking questions whether anyone online, but okay, thank you. So I will ask anyone online. Hearing no further comment, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Thank you, Charlene.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 19252, 2021, to authorize installation of a stop sign northbound on Chatwood Lane at Ward Hill Road.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 19-253, 2021 to adopt the 2022 fee schedules.
Second.
So a couple of the noted changes, because we're adding air conditioning to the remaining unair conditioned cabins, those fees will move up to the same fee schedule that we have for air conditioned cabins, meaning they're all going to be the same. So that'll be good. We did add a note. If you remember, we had the discussion yesterday about how we deal with the unified solar permit. We decided to add a note that makes it clear in the fee schedule that if you essentially apply through the unified solar permit, that the CFC fee and the plan review fee are included in the solar application, the solar building permit fee. So instead of $205, it drops to $75. And again, that is part of something for, I can never keep track whether it's the CSC or CEC, but it basically gets us points towards climate smart communities or the other one, clean energy cities. And basically what'll happen is, or maybe it's consortium, I can never remember all their acronyms. But anyway, if you get enough points, you actually get a grant that we can then use to, for instance, one of the things we've talked about for all the short stop and go, like the inspectors or folks working at the assessors who have to drive around, code enforcement, that we'd start looking at, do we move them to an electric fleet? Would certainly a single day's charge would cover them for all their days travel, plug it in at night, reduce our energy commission. So there's actually, it would be enough money to potentially buy a couple cars and install the chargers for them. So that great suggestion by Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert on a good way to potentially spend that money. So, and that was, again, I know the Sustainability Committee is very excited about the possibilities. Anything else? Anything online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 19-254, 2021 to declare the item surplus materials.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, I have resolution 19-255, 2021 to make the appropriate budget transfer per the 2021 adopted budget.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thanks.
And these are just expenditure reconciliations, so. Hearing no further discussion, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 19-256, 2021 to hire personnel, make the attached changes and make the progression increases.
Seconded.
So again, as it states, this includes the second step increase, the fall step increase as per the current union contract. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 19-257, 2021 to authorize the purchase of materials from Dreary's Gymnastics Supply, DGS, for the replacement of the gymnastics spring floor at the Henrietta Recreation Center.
Second. So this resolution and the next one, I apologize for the late addition. We basically, in each one, different thing, had an offer that basically saved taxpayers money, but the purchase date had to be one was by the end of this week, one was by the end of next week. Originally, we were going to have these as part of next meeting's agenda, but when we got those offers to save money, we took them. So good work by Pam Grunman and her team in terms of getting that getting those savings. And the second one also, the acoustical one coming up next is also just part of it was we could potentially get it installed during a holiday long weekend, which will help tremendously. So any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 19-258, 2021 to authorize the purchase and installation of spray applied acoustical treatment from Standard Insulating Company for installation in the activity room and multi-purpose rooms 1 and 2 in the Henrietta Rec Center.
Second.
So for anybody who's ever been in there, you know the acoustics are terrible. We had someone come in and do analysis. This was the most cost-effective way to significantly improve the acoustics. They still won't be perfect because there's so many hard surfaces, but it will help tremendously.
As somebody who has had meetings over there, this should have been done when the place was built. It is very much needed.
So again, thanks to Pam and her team for getting this put together and turning around Jenny Miranda for turning around the resolutions very quickly and getting them on the agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So before we go to the next resolution, Don, what do you think is your ruling? Was there enough significant change that we should delay the adoption of the local law for another meeting?
I think it could go forward with the minor changes we had tonight if the board is so inclined.
Okay, so it's up to the board whether we want to, what does the board think? Do you want to put this forth a resolution to approve? Do you want would be as amended?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Or would you rather wait 2 weeks?
I mean, if it doesn't matter, I mean, is there anything that?
I don't think there's anything pending.
I'd rather see it written.
Okay.
Written up if, I mean.
Anyone disagree? I don't think there's anything urgent. I don't see an issue with waiting 2 weeks.
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so we just will not read the last resolution.
Okay.
I will just read into the record here that Naomi has commented that in view of the Jewish holiday, she also thought it might be better to postpone until the next meeting. And she said a neighbor contacted her who was unable to get into Zoom to comment this evening, and they're planning to send in written comments.
Okay, great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Naomi. See, the one time I forget to ask, not the one time, but one of the times forget to ask anyone online, I get an online comment. Okay, that concludes our resolutions. Do we have any public discussion discussion items from the board or from the public?
Well, I'll
Not
make it-
announcements.
Not
That's
announcements,
next.
not announcements. I want to make a quick
Okay.
comment about a friend of mine who lives in the city who works out here in Henrietta, came to the town clerk's office a week or so ago to purchase his hunting licenses, and how great the clerks were, and got him in and out, and thought they brought it to my attention even, that I was, hey, I know you're on the town board. I just want to tell you how great the clerks were, and got me in and out, and he spent his $110, I think it was. And so he's very happy with that.
I'm going to add to your comment. I have a client that just lived in Henrietta and just moved out of town and is dealing with another town. And he is just beside himself because he said, we have no idea what a wonderful town we have to work with. He comes into Henrietta, whether it be the building department or the clerks. And in Henrietta, they are so courteous. They are so pleasant and good to work with. In this town that he just moved to, they are miserable. And he is like, if I had known, he said, I would not have made the move that I made. So I just want to go along and say,
I
we
can
are
get that name later because I've got a supervisor association meeting coming up. So I gotta-
I'm gonna triple up on that. I had a friend come in a week or two ago that needed some help with notary, and he was very pleased with the help he got here at town.
Yeah, we're very lucky. We have a wonderful group here.
With all our employees, not just. yeah,
Yes,
all
with
the employees,
everybody.
yes.
I agree with that.
How can you leave us?
The other comment I have to make, I had somebody, and I'm not sure where it stands, that was concerned about political signs going up already. I think he made a complaint with the
Code enforcement?
Code enforcement, thank you.
Does anybody know when early voting opens?
Well, is it,
Becky, do you know that?
It's probably a month before.
It's the early voting is the week before, so it'll be the end of October.
is it the event is election day?
It's from the start of open early voting.
Yeah,
Okay.
early voting.
And the third and
30
final
days.
thing,
So you, s-
October 23rd starts early voting.
so it would be roughly September 23rd,
right,
because I seem to think it's,
they've,
because I believe it's 30 days.
and they've been up a couple weeks already, a week and a half,
Okay.
I would say.
Yeah, if they could notify code enforcement, I'm not sure where they're at. I will say some political signs are a tougher one to deal with, because then you get hit with accusations of playing favorites, so.
Code's a code, but
It's funny because, I do a lot of driving, that a lot of other towns have them up.
yeah,
Yes, they
other
do.
towns don't
Yeah.
have any
Yeah.
code, but.
They don't
that
have the
was-
code that we have.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
amazing how many signs have them up. I'm just like, I can't even believe it.
That was put in 6 years ago or so, I believe that,
Yeah.
if I remember
I
correctly.
don't remember exactly, but.
And then the third thing I have is once again, we talk a lot about safety and traffic. Once again, I've heard some complaints about some of the Amazon trucks that whip around. I'm not sure if it's the company's procedure or practices to, get people out quicker and faster and get more unloaded, and then let's say UPS and FedEx, that they don't have the same issues, but just some concerns. I don't know if the town could.
I will just say that Amazon is not alone in their issues with trucking. I've had UPS blocking a lane of Lehigh Station Road.
Right, and I know that as soon as you,
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah, I
got
think
that
it's-
clarified or
Right.
taken care of.
Yep.
Very, and I, yeah.
So was this coming out of the Amazon facility or is this?
Just around Clay and Jefferson, around that facility, yeah.
They do bebop around pretty fast
So,
sometimes. Mhm.
so that's what I got. Okay.
So you know, all those trucks are independently owned. They're not really owned by, they're leasing the trucks from Amazon. So the DSPs are really responsible for the drivers. They rate those trucks, but
And have we,
I would say write down the number and the truck number and report it. That would be the best way to do it. Then you know exactly what truck it is.
have we, when they built when they built over there on Clay, did they give us any estimates of numbers of vehicles that were gonna come and go and what they are now? I mean, that place is.
They did,
it
but-
Seems to be much bigger than it was.
They did.
It expanded.
Right, and it expanded and they got a permit for the expansion and they've added additional parking and they've added a longer through lane and they've added yet another parking space. And so, I mean, Amazon's taken off. I don't know what the impact of the large Amazon facility on the west side is gonna be, if any. I know it's certainly affecting anybody who tries to buy concrete right now. But you know, businesses get successful and grow.
I heard that the DSP, some of the DSPs that are here in Henrietta will be moving to like Mount Reed. So they're moving some of their workers over that.
I don't have a problem with businesses growing. I just have a problem if they're not doing it safely.
I wanted to add in on that, Deputy Town Supervisor Craig Eckert, I wanted to add in that I received a complaint late last week too from the facilities manager at Unither, that they were blocking the road to get their vehicles out.
Okay.
I had not had a chance to follow up on that, but if we do, we can include those together.
Yeah, absolutely. You and or, you know, if you could talk with Kevin from Building Fire Prevention to basically talk about how we can address that.
Yep, very good.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I wanted to just urge the board that I'd like to see us move forward with some of the cannabis legislation that we, zoning that we've been discussing. You may have seen an article in the Rochester City newspaper about a local Henrietta hemp shop that is, they have a thing where people can go in and purchase an expensive t-shirt for like $65 and then they're gifted cannabis. So, you know, I just think that that's something that should go into restrictive zoning.
Well, one of the things, you know, so again, one of the things, Albany wasn't giving out much in the way of guidance. I do know that I heard from the new governor that she's working to change that. But that brings up a good point, is it shouldn't just be the sale of cannabis, it should be the supply of cannabis.
Yes.
Distribution. Yep.
Right, because gifting is technically not a sale. Yeah, I know they're really getting around it, cheating, but you'd have to take them to court. It'd be much easier if our regulations talk about the sale, distribution, consumption, whole 9 yards.
Yes. Thank you. The other thing I want to mention is today is the International Day of Literacy. So I was debating whether to put it in announcements or discussion items, but this is a literacy challenge that Literacy Rochester is challenging many public officials to. So the event today, there were many public officials that were there, including Adam Bello, our local Michael Yudelson, and other county legislators and assembly people from both sides of the aisle. The challenge is to try to stop reading anything for 5 minutes during the course of your afternoon. The reality is that there are many people, even within Henrietta, that struggle to read above even a 4th or 5th grade reading level. And this is not something that's in the public awareness a lot. But I think it's something that is important. And I would love to challenge the board members here to try to stop reading in the middle of your day for 5 minutes. So there's a flyer here if you're interested in looking.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
It's an
Accept that
interesting,
challenge.
Thank you.
it's an interesting thought too. I don't think we realize how much we read from reading a shampoo bottle. Are we doing the shampoo or the conditioner in the morning to,
Reading signs when you're driving. so you
right, to
know where
just
you're going.
everything. I mean, it's just, it's,
Please don't take the challenge while you're driving.
yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
The speed sign, the speed barometer that's on Calkins, is that the one that, is that Rick lives over there? There's a guy that, there's a citizen that he came in, and he talked about the speeding down Calkins.
Correct.
What's his name? I can't remember his name.
I
know he. Yeah. He services our copiers too here, I think. Does he?
I don't remember, but I'm.
Does he
Yes,
service our
he's-
copiers or any of our stuff in here? The guy who lives there?
Anyway.
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Fitzgerald is the name that's coming to my
Fitzgerald,
1475,
something like that.
Yeah, he's a third house down or so. He's the
Right.
One that he's done radar on that street.
Right, exactly. I just can't remember his first
So
name.
he actually was going to come in today to give, so I believe I think that's where the.
Are you talking about Dave Christensen?
Yeah, that's who,
Oh.
Dave. Thank you, Dave.
Right, he was.
It was the radar gun that tipped me off.
Right, the radar
He was
gun.
originally going to come in today to talk about, he's the one who made that comment about never seen so many taillights. But because of the 2 public hearings, he decided to put it off till next meeting.
Smart man.
So-
Well, I saw him out there when the officer was setting up everything.
Yeah,
and
so
whatnot.
he was very appreciative of that effort, and he's gonna give us the data.
Okay.
That's a nice one that's over there. I like that one.
Yeah, it's really small and,
Mhm. And I think it sends you, there's like a little message or something.
yeah, there's a
like that.
message on the
Thank you,
board.
or-
Yeah, thank you for slowing down, or you slow down for safety or something.
I went by one recently and gave you a smiley face. So that means I wasn't speeding, by the way, so.
That's all I have.
Any other committee reports
From the
or
park-
miscellaneous reports? Go ahead.
From Parks and Recreation, the Universal Pre-K program started today over to the rec center. I know all the staff over there was probably happy to see the little ones back again. The Honey Harvest Fest at Tinker is coming up on Saturday, September 18th. You can watch them, watch the honey extraction, sample the honey, and purchase some honey to take home. I know Steve will love to see the bees over there again, while they're, so that should be a good time. There's also there'll also be wagon rides, live music, and the cider press demonstration, and that's free admission. Registration isn't required, is not required. 25th annual cupboard craft sale will be held at the Recreation Center on Saturday, October 9th, 9 to 3, and Sunday, October 10th, 9 to 3. All proceeds go to benefit Rush Henrietta area food terminals. And then sorry. Applications for the Martin Luther King Jr. Love Overcomes Scholarship are now available at henrietta.org/park and recreation. Deadline for that is submission is November 1st. We're done.
Others?
So I think, as everyone knows, today was the first day of school for the Rush Henrietta School District. And from all accounts, everything went very well. There were some issues with busing and transportation, which is not uncommon, but it may take a couple days to shake it out. Personally, I have been very pleased with the COVID safety protocols for all of our students, but particularly for those in the elementary schools who are not eligible for vaccination as yet. Those protocols may be changing as some information from the state has been updated. And then I think relevant to this particular board is the Good Shepherd property. They're moving forward and looking at some plans for developing that property. Now that we're moving past some of the setbacks from COVID and have settled the issue of the historic sites.
So a couple of things from me, the library, we do have some openings on the library board. So if it's something that you're interested in, please check online and submit your resume. And in reference to some of the cannabis stuff that's going on right now, the Henrietta Public Library has a seminar on the September 14th from 7 to 8:30, talking about New York marijuana legislation and taxation. It's a Zoom, but you have to register for that. And then the other thing is, don't forget the contest going on through Henrietta, Seeing Henrietta Through Your Eyes contest. Imagine your creations here. So we're looking for artwork just representing what Henrietta means to you, or a place in Henrietta. You can do it either through drawings, through what do I want to say? It's building something, whatever, but just send a photo in and all the information is on the Henrietta website. And I think that's it.
Two things, on Monday, September 27th, 2021 is the William J. Welsh Memorial Scholarship Fund golf tournament. It's sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, Henrietta Chamber of Commerce. It's actually being held at Locust Hill Country Club this year. And the proceeds go to fund scholarships for Rush Henrietta students.
What date is that, Steve?
Monday, September 27th. Shotgun start at noon. And if you're interested, well, none of these emails are easily remembered, so I'll just say, if you're interested, feel free to contact me at supervisor@henrietta.org, and I'll connect you with the individuals in there. They're definitely looking for more players. We've got a lot of sponsors. We need to find some players. So also, if you're wondering where the town newsletter is, it's still at the printers. I submitted it on August 10th, and we still don't have it yet.
Mike?
It's not
No,
Mike's.
I will add something. Maybe I shouldn't.
Well, we'll talk about that. I did reproach Mike about, let's start to look at alternatives for next year, because this is ridiculous. But they are, it is supposed to be going to the post office on Friday. Some of the dates in there, like the Scoob movie, are a little bit past, but it's been frustrating. So hopefully it should be out soon. Anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no objections, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much to our interpreter. Sorry for the